Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. I'm Lee Camp. How's everybody doing out there? Welcome to the show. We're going to cover the fact that the ceasefire talks seem to have largely collapsed, although the U.S. is saying they haven't. But the U.S. has this slight tendency to lie. They love the lying. Also a big show because I'm going to have on a guest. She's been on once before, Charlotte Dennett, who is a journalist, a lawyer, but also an author. And her father was in the early precursor to the CIA, the Central Intelligence Group. And she put out a book called Follow the Pipelines about our pursuit for oil and the pipelines that provide that oil, and her father's mysterious death on a plane into the side of a mountain. So, but very fascinating stuff always coming from her. So that'll be interesting. That'll be in about half an hour or so. Charlotte will be joining us. I have some good news and some bad news about my stuff. The good news is live shows coming up in not too long in New York and Los Angeles. I don't get to do live comedy shows very often, so if you ever thought of coming to one of those shows, you should do it because I don't tour like I used to. So Los Angeles and New York City live comedy shows. John F. O'Donnell from Redacted Tonight will be on both of them. Naomi Caravani will be on the New York show as well from Redacted Tonight. Anyway, that's all at leecamp.com/schedule. The bad news, which this is the first time I'm announcing it, but I'll be talking a little more about it. And actually, I'll talk more about it in this hour. But I just wanted to say up top that basically my other show, Unredacted Tonight, is being forced to end. There's about 2 episodes left. Well, there are 2 episodes left this coming Thursday and the following Thursday. I have done everything I can to keep it going, and I will explain all of that a little later in this hour. It's certainly not something I'm excited to do to stop Unredacted Tonight. But just to be clear, if you only watch the live streams, or if you only listen to the podcast, or if you only watch those and read the Substack, and you Unredacted Tonight, you barely know what it is, nothing will change for you. But for those of you who are big fans of it, thank you, and thank you for supporting it. And again, I'll explain all the details of that in a few minutes. But let's start off. I wanted to start off with the news rather than starting off with my stuff. Rather than making me the story, we're gonna wait 20 minutes to make me the story. But I wanted to, rather than me giving the rundown, I wanted to allow Professor Morandi to do it. You might know Professor Morandi. I've played his clips before. He's always doing an amazing job of obliterating the mainstream media. He is an Iranian professor who always speaks very candidly and very clearly on these matters. He was at the talks, the ceasefire talks in Islamabad. And I just want to play, it's like a 1-minute clip of him in this interview. He's just been asked how the ceasefire talks are going.
Well, the negotiations have collapsed, and as I think most Iranians expected, the United States was behaving as it usually does. In other words, with arrogance and without any regard for sovereignty and for the independence of nations. Trump regime has basically attempted to dictate terms to the Iranian people. And obviously, that is something that is unacceptable. They failed during 40 days of war, and they cannot win at the negotiating table, meaning forcing Iran to lose. And we're seeing the United States turning into an openly extremist regime, where even the media now is calling for the murder of the negotiators, Washington Post, and Western elites think tankers, and others are naming individual, naming, sorry, naming me, naming others as targets, which is not going to have an impact on the way in which Iran conducts itself. It's only exposing the United States and the empire even further.
So there's a little update. He's saying they've collapsed. The United States now today is claiming that, oh, Iran called us and we're talking again. But I don't know if I believe any of that. But it's not surprising that these ceasefire talks have collapsed or have not gone anywhere. Let's assume Iran did call. They haven't gone anywhere yet. And to me, it's not a surprise because clearly the United States is doing what you would assume they would do. This is J.D. Vance and Witkoff and Kushner and as the voice of Donald Trump. What do you think they're asking for in that negotiation room? What are they coming down? What are they coming to the table with? They are asking for the exact same things they tried to get via bombing the shit out of Iran. They're not changing the things they want. So they're saying the United States controls the Strait of Hormuz. They're saying no more uranium enrichment because only Israel and the United States are allowed to have nuclear bombs, even though the U.S. is the only one to ever use them, killing hundreds of thousands. They're saying probably regime change. They're saying no more missiles. Basically, give up your right to defend yourself, so that if we want to do more to you later, if we choose to obliterate you further later, we will have an easy time doing that. So please give up anything that could allow you to defend yourself. And those are the type of things they're asking for. But they failed to get that via bombs. They failed to get that via killing many of Iran's leaders. They failed to get that via just straight up terrorism, blowing up schools, blowing up children, blowing up bridges, blowing up universities. And this is not that one. That one school is a uniquely horrific example, but the U.S. targeted dozens of schools, universities, hospitals across Iran. And so the U.S. essentially lost in that they couldn't achieve their aims. Iran was able to defend itself in the sense that it was able to stop the U.S. from getting what they wanted. It was able to not collapse into a stateless nation. And so they're winning in that sense. And if Iran is winning in that sense and you come to the negotiation table and pretend as if, oh no, the U.S. is winning and we can do whatever we want to you and you should give us whatever we want, well, you've got no negotiate. There's no leverage there. Like, the U.S. has already been doing horrific shit to Iran, and it has not stopped Iran from defending their society. So what makes the U.S. think that you can just go into these talks in Islamabad and go, oh, yeah, well, just give us everything we want and you'll be fine? It's really laughable. And so now, as most of you saw in the headlines of the news, the U.S. has responded by saying, you better open up the fucking Strait of Hormuz or we are going to block the Strait of Hormuz. Literally, this is what the U.S. is doing. The U.S. is now barricading, blockading. I said that word twice for some unknown reason. I got caught in a feedback loop. Blockading the Strait of Hormuz. So and the reason is because the U.S. is furious that it's mainly the U.S. and U.S. allies who are not able to get through the Strait of Hormuz, and the Iran allies are able because Iran has control of it. And that's making the U.S. very angry. So the U.S. is basically saying, well, if you stop us, we're going to stop everyone, which has been the next move. China, I saw, responded by saying, because the U.S. is basically saying, don't do any trade with Iran, don't buy oil from Iran, don't do anything with Iran. And China, who receives about 80% or something of all the oil coming out of Iran, it goes to China. China has said, we have Iran's permission, we have our own permission. That is all that matters. You do not own this part of the world, United States. You do not own Iran, and you do not own China. So why should China's business have anything to do with you right now? And so, it really is kind of a hilarious situation of Trump and his goons' own making. But as I've said many times over the years, over the over the years, but over these past few months is when they started bombing. I've said this is not just Trump, right? The U.S. has been planning for this absolute shit show for years, decades. And there's other ways that the U.S. and so oil has shot up again. The number of U.S. soldiers that are thinking about conscientious objection has risen by 1,000%. And, if you have friends who are thinking about it, you should encourage them to maybe think about not being part of genocide. That would be awesome, to not be part of blowing up schools and things like that. What Professor Morandi was talking about when he said that even the media now is in the U.S. is recommending, just murdering innocent people. He was referring to a Washington Post article, but it wasn't just one. There was one article that I don't have here that said that basically was saying, we'll just kill the negotiators, kill anyone you want to make Iran give you what the U.S. empire wants. But there's other articles. This isn't even the one he was talking about, I don't think. But this is the Washington Post saying, Iran thinks it has leverage. Here's how Trump can prove it wrong. And if you have to actually look at the article, it basically just says, kill everybody. Just keep bombing things until they give you what you want, which was what Trump was doing to begin with. So here is the Washington Post encouraging Trump to be more psychopathic, more of a terrorist. Just why'd you stop? Just keep murdering everyone until you get what you want. It really, there is no argument to be made that this is not a psychopathic empire now. It's not just Trump. It is a whole ruling elite of what many are calling pedo terrorists. But even if the pedo is only a percentage, they're still psychopath terrorists. And you even have your mainstream media saying, well, I don't understand. Why aren't we just killing children until they give us what we want? It's absolutely unhinged. I see Herney in the chat. No, Herney, I have not given the details of the show ending. That will be coming up soon. I will hopefully have time for all that. But yes. And here is even John Kerry talking about how insane this is. And also he reveals a little bit about the internally what went on. John Kerry, of course, average Democrat, war hawk. People give him a lot of credit because after he got back with his Purple Heart from Vietnam, when people were protesting against the Vietnam War, he became a voice of the protesters and threw his Purple Heart over the wall at the Capitol or whatever he did to say, I don't want this anymore, end the Vietnam War. So people give him credit for that. Then he went on, though, to just be a war hawk and support essentially all the U.S. wars until it became popular. Once it became popular to criticize the Iraq War, he was willing to criticize it. But anyway, here he is.
Yes, he wanted us to strike.
Sorry, they don't. As with many of these clips, they leave out the beginning. He's talking about Netanyahu, and Netanyahu has been seeking these strikes against Iran for years.
Yes, he wanted us to strike. He came to President Obama. He made a presentation to ask to strike. President Obama refused. President Biden refused. President Bush refused. The only president who has agreed to this, obviously, is President Trump.
Now, of course, this also doesn't mean that the U.S. wasn't doing just about everything else that Israel wanted during that time. And here is John Kerry admitting that, Netanyahu had really the ear of the White House throughout all those administrations. Sure, they ultimately did not attack Iran during those administrations, but as I've shown before, Netanyahu essentially said recently that he waited 40 years for a president. He didn't use the term dumb, but a president as dumb enough to bomb Iran, to do what Netanyahu wanted. And finally, he found it with Donald Trump. Oh, yeah, here's Iran. By the way, if you watch Iranian social media, they are doing a great job of trolling the United States, basically trolling the United States with truth, which the United States fucking hates truth. It's just awful. Anyway, the Iranian embassy in Sierra Leone put up an image of, this is all the countries where the U.S. has bombed since World War II. Now, this is not all of the countries the U.S. has couped. The U.S. has couped many, many more than this. This is just actively bombing. This is just planes dropping bombs. And I'm not going to read, several of these have multiple years. So it's like Libya, we bombed at 3 separate times, 1986, 1989, 2011. I'm not going to read the years because we'll be here all day, but I'll read all the countries on this map. Dominican Republic, Cuba, Guatemala, El Salvador, Panama, Peru, Venezuela, Grenada, Iran, Sudan, Nicaragua. By the way, Iran was like 5 different times. Bosnia, Serbia, Yugoslavia, Nigeria, Kuwait, Iraq, Afghanistan, China, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Indonesia, Somalia, Lebanon, Syria, Belgian Congo, Libya. I already did the Bosnia list. Okay, so that's the list of places we've and the other thing is that's just the United States bombing. Many times we put other countries up to bombing, such as the proxy war in Ukraine. So this is just U.S. bombs literally dropped by U.S. jets. The other thing is we sell and hand off a lot of bombs to be dropped on countries. But again, those are not on this list. It is, we are above and beyond the number one cause of death and destruction in this world. Of war, death, destruction. This list also does not count the 38 million people killed by U.S. sanctions. The U.S. is also generally one of the only countries that are actively sanctioning, meaning economic war against other countries. There are some sanctions, but most of the sanctions by other countries are just other countries signing on to U.S. sanctions because they got pressured into doing it. So if you take away on the sanctions list, on the economic war list, if you took away all the ones the U.S. is doing alone, all the ones that the U.S. is doing and they led others into, and you were to just have the sanctions by countries that are not the U.S. and not connected to the U.S., you'd have almost no economic war around the world, which has killed 38 million people since 1970. And here are some more ramifications of this ongoing attack on Iran, the ramifications for the U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar continues to lose market share. The U.S. dollar now represents about 46% of global FX and gold reserves, the lowest in 26 years. This percentage has declined negative 15 points since 2017. If you exclude gold, the U.S. dollar makes up 57% of the global reserve currencies. And this is really where the U.S. dollar gets its power. It's why we can print endless U.S. dollars and not have just epic inflation, basically making the dollar meaningless. It's a combination of the global reserve currency and the petrodollar. Basically, the U.S. wouldn't be the global reserve currency if it weren't for the petrodollar. But so we are now down to only 57% of the global. I think initially it was up near 80%. Down to 57% of the global reserve currencies are dollars, lowest since 1994. This comes as central banks have aggressively accumulated gold and diversified their currencies. The last time the U.S. dollar fell below 50% of global reserves was 1991, a period marked by elevated inflation, a recession, and a crisis of confidence in the U.S. economy. And if you can see on this chart, so yeah, you go back to before 2000 and it was a little closer to where it is now, but if you start at like 2005, it's just been down and down and down and down and down, and now we're at 47%. It's like the writing's on the wall. So people have unearthed this amazing clip. Okay, after this, I got to get into. I'll give the reasons that. In just a moment, I'll give the reasons that Unredacted Tonight is being forced to end. And I also will bring on Charlotte Dennett in a few minutes. But here is a clip. People have unearthed a clip of Donald Trump in 2008 doing an interview. And my God, just compare it to what's going on today. You don't even have to say anything. You just watch him talk and you compare it to what's happening today. This is now you're gonna miss the first word because Instagram blows. But they're talking. He's asked in the interview what he thinks of Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi.
Is he the speaker?
Well, you know, when she first got in and was named speaker, I met her and I'm very impressed by her. I think she's a very impressive person. I like her a lot. But I was surprised that she didn't do more in terms of Bush and going after Bush. It just seemed like she was going to really look to impeach Bush and get him out of office, which personally I think would have been a wonderful thing.
Impeaching him?
Absolutely. For the war. For the war.
Because of the conduct of
Well,
the
he
war.
lied. He got us into the war with lies. And I mean, look at the trouble Bill Clinton got into with something that was totally unimportant. And they tried to impeach him, which was nonsense. And yet Bush got us into this horrible war with lies, by lying, by saying they had weapons of mass destruction, by saying all sorts of things that turned out not to be true.
Bush lied. He should have been impeached. He lied and got us into war because of weapons of mass destruction. And what were the lies that got us into this war with Iran? Oh, they're trying to make nuclear weapons. Weapons of mass destruction. Dude, there's no new bullshit. It's just the same bullshit over and over, rinse and repeat. They don't rinse it hard enough because it's still bullshit afterwards. But it is just the same, just on loop. He lied and got us into a war. Oh, what a piece of absolute human garbage. Okay. I do have lots more, but we'll get to that probably after the interview with Charlotte Dennett. But I want to talk about real quick. I'm being forced to end Unredacted tonight. Most of you know, some of you may only watch my live streams and you don't know what I'm talking about. I have a comedy show, half-hour comedy show. Well, 20 minutes, 22 minutes to a half hour every week called Unredacted Tonight. It was my independent, I guess it is for 2 more weeks, my independent effort to recreate Redacted Tonight, the TV show I had for 8 years that many of you know was killed by U.S. sanctions. And I have done everything I can to keep Unredacted. It's been going for a year. Unredacted Tonight. It's completely independent. It's completely me. I write it all, produce it. But even writing it all and producing it and all that stuff, I am funding it myself. And it costs a lot of money to make, relative, obviously, to everything. And I can't keep the funding going because now how am I being forced? It's like, all right, Lisa, you don't have the money for it. Well, that's who's forcing you? It is very clear that we are crazy suppressed on YouTube. Everything I do is crazy suppressed on YouTube. Now, some people go, oh, you're just saying that. Maybe people just don't want to watch your shit. But the truth is, you can look at the analytics. You can get deep into the analytics of these shows, of any show on YouTube, and you can know what YouTube is doing with it, whether they're showing it to people, whether they're showing it to your subscribers, because they show you the percentage of people that watch based on getting alerts. They show you the number of people that watch based on browsing, which means they're looking around YouTube and your show pops up and YouTube says, how about this? And this goes for any show on YouTube. The largest place they're going to get viewers is from YouTube recommending their show, either to their subscribers or to randos that it seems like would like it. That is the number one place. Even the biggest show on YouTube, Mr. Beast or whatever, the number one place he gets views is by YouTube recommending the show to people, either people who are already subscribed or people who have not already subscribed, whatever, they're on YouTube. That is the number one place. And if you are on YouTube and you do not have access to that, essentially YouTube is both not alerting that many subscribers and not recommending it to people, then it's nearly impossible. It's like yelling in a forest. Can anyone hear it? So we did have, when we first started Unredacted Tonight, we had about 3 months where it seemed like the YouTube algorithm, or I don't know whether it's a human being or not, but the YouTube algorithm basically let us grow. Sometimes I will override, like I'll do something that's so popular, so successful, it'll just beat the suppression they have on me. And that seemed to be what happened the first 3 months of Unredacted Tonight. We were growing, we were regularly growing, and it was, some of them did quite well. And then clearly, I think a human, but who knows? They could have algorithmic choices like this. But clearly, it stopped. It didn't just stop growing. It went the other direction. It seems that there's an algorithm to also make sure, or a human to make sure, that I am not getting 100,000 on subscribers on YouTube, because I've been at 96.6 for like months now. They were just like, yeah, no. See, when I started Unredacted Night over a year ago, we were at 80 something. And I started gaining a lot of subscribers. And I was headed towards 100,000 rather quickly after a few months. And then, boom, shut down. So with all of that said, because of this suppression, it not only does Unredacted Tonight not make any money, it loses a lot of money. And I, as you know, I was during the holidays back in December, I was trying to keep it going longer, and we succeeded for a few months. But it's just become impossible. And I will still be doing all my live streams. So I hope you're fans of these, and I hope you keep showing up. Also, if you want to support my live streams and my Substack columns, because I will also be doing my Substack columns regularly. I will be doing all of those. And so if you want to support those, I really hope you do. And it's the cost of a beer a month. And so if it is worth it to keep my other shows, this live stream, my podcasts, my Substack columns, if it's worth it to you to keep those going, then I really hope you will sign up at realleecamp.substack.com or patreon.com/leecamp, or my locals page, which is leecamp.net. But yeah, it is painful to see this happen, and to see it happen again and again and again. I mean, for those of you who need a refresher, I realize people are joining for the first time all the time, so I can't just act like everybody knows everything. But for those of you who need a refresher, my TV show was crushed by U.S. sanctions 4 years ago. In the same week, my main YouTube page, which had 250,000 subscribers, was banned around the world. My podcast on Spotify, used to be called Moment of Clarity, was banned around the world. Now it's called the Lee Camp Show, because I started it anew. My TikTok's been banned. My Facebook's been heavily suppressed. My ex Twitter account is heavily suppressed. And this newer YouTube channel is heavily suppressed. So I fight against all that. I had a show with Mint Press for a year, which was also crazy suppressed. And so it ultimately wasn't worth it financially for them to keep that going. And now I have to say goodbye to Unredacted Tonight. Now, obviously, because Unredacted Tonight was my own creation, completely independent, nobody funding it, it also means that things could change. There could be something months from now where an outlet shows up and says, let's fund this. But as you know, there's very few outlets that are willing to. Someone's asking if I'm on Rumble. Yes, I'm on Rumble, rumble.com/leecamp. And I even, for a year after Redacted Night ended, I even had a deal with Rumble to also live stream my stuff on Rumble. But Rumble is funded by far-right, lunatics. And they ultimately didn't, I think initially they thought, well, we'll have a lefty on there. We'll have a guy who's not far right-wing, so we can say we're not far right-wing. But ultimately they, I think, didn't like that they had someone on who was telling the truth. They were like, why are we promoting a show that says the truth that isn't our pretend truth? This is awful. So anyway, that ended a while ago. But I'm still on Rumble, rumble.com/leecamp. But anyway, all of that is to say, please don't stop watching the live streams. They're not going anywhere. There's 2 more episodes of Unredacted Tonight this week and next week. please, if you are a supporter, please don't stop supporting my stuff, because I would very much like to keep everything going. That's everything else that I do, which is live streams 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and all of my columns. I just put up a new column, free to read at Substack right now. I just put up a few hours ago. So I hope you will see fit to support those things and keep everything else going. And I am sorry about Unredacted tonight. Like I said, I really have worked my fucking ass off on that show and tried really hard to keep it going. So please don't think I haven't tried. Prime, and thank you guys for throwing in recommendations of how to keep it going. Prime is asking, maybe it's pronounced Prime, is asking about Means TV. I am on Means TV. Unfortunately, unless, and this is no insult on Means TV. This is just how they work. By the way, they're a co-op. They're a great place. I'm not insulting them, but how it works there is unless you're funneling a large amount of traffic to Means TV, you're not really making any money off Means TV by having a show there. So I have Unredacted is on Means TV. It doesn't provide any funding though. So, but yes, thank you guys for trying to throw answers in there, and probably I've thought of them all or tried to think of them all. I have reached out to other outlets that you might think would like my stuff, and most of them are either don't have the money, and it's not a lot of money, but don't have any money to support it, or they are kind of scared to have something that like what I do, even if they're doing good work. So anyway. All right, let's move on because we have a great guest coming up and I want to get to that. I'm sure I'll be mentioning this some more. I'll probably talk about it again on Wednesday because obviously not everybody watches this every live stream. So I might repeat myself on some of this, but anyway, let's keep going with an excellent guest, a second timer on the show, and her book, Follow the Pipelines, is now out in paperback, and she is an excellent journalist. She is a former Middle East reporter, investigative journalist, and attorney. Check out Follow the Pipelines. Also, she is the daughter of someone many consider the first U.S. master spy of the Middle East, Daniel Dennett. And did I get that right? Daniel Dennett? Yes. Okay. And please welcome Charlotte Dennett. Well.
Hey, how are you doing? You're depressing me.
Oh, sorry to depress you.
I've been fighting against censorship and suppression for so long, you have no idea. And my husband.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I even have a word in the publishing industry. It's called privishing. To publish a book privately so it sinks without a trace. We could have a whole show on that, but that's not the purpose of today.
Do you have any other mic options? It's fuzzy. I'm just wondering if you might have any other. Yeah.
No, I could try. Wait a minute. I don't think it was working well. Let me try.
It might be the only.
Oh, the other thing I'd have to run into my husband's office and grab his. Hold on. Let's see if this works. But I'm not sure I can hear you. Okay.
Testing.
Does that make any difference?
No, that did not change it for me.
No.
That did not change it for me.
So this is not going to work. Listen, give me a second.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll do a quick other story and then bring you back. All right. Someone said that is immeasurably worse. Yeah. For some reason that made it worse. Oh. There we go. Okay. Let me play this while we're waiting on her. Let me play this Mersheimer clip, which I was hoping to play. Anyway, he is talking about he's talking about Israel, and anyway, this clip speaks for itself. But let's see here.
The punishment campaign morphs into a genocide campaign. And if you can't drive out the Palestinians, then you kill them all, you murder them all. And you do that through bombing, and you do that through starvation. And this, of course, is what happened. And this is why I think it is perfectly appropriate to describe what happened in Gaza as a genocide. I want to make one other point about that genocide, which has implications for what I'm going to say about Iran and moving forward. What is truly remarkable to me, as someone who is a realist, who has operated in a very liberal academic and intellectual environment in the United States for all of my life, is the extent to which liberals, dedicated liberals who profess to believe in human rights, said virtually nothing when this genocide was taking place. And it's not only because the Israelis were committing a genocide that I'm shocked and people didn't say anything. In a fundamental way, what shocked me even more was that the United States is complicit in the genocide. There's just no question about this. If we had Nuremberg trials, we're not going to have them, but if we had Nuremberg-like trials, Joe Biden and his principal lieutenants and Donald Trump and his principal lieutenants would be hanged. There's no question in my mind about this.
It's a great point. If you had Nuremberg trials as to who's responsible for the genocide in Gaza, who would it be? Well, Netanyahu and his goons, Trump and his goons, Biden and his goons. There's very few people like Mersheimer that are kind of in the upper levels of academia or the upper levels of our political class who are willing to speak out like this. And I hope he keeps doing it, because it's always great to hear him speaking out about these things. And he's absolutely right. Of course they would. But genocide is just becoming the norm. It's fucking crazy. All right, let's try again with Charlotte Dennett. Certainly want to try and hear her well. Let's see. How about now?
You sound a little scratchy to me, but how do I sound to you?
It sounds a little better. So let's go ahead with this.
Okay. Yeah.
And if you can just tilt your screen a little down, slightly down. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much for coming on.
Let's give it a shot.
I want to get to, obviously, to Iran and Lebanon, and you have very interesting things to say about that. But I want to start by kind of, for those who didn't see your first interview with me, reminding everybody about your book, Follow the Pipelines, and about your father and your pursuit of the truth. If you could just try and give a summary of that.
Well, a summary of that. I didn't know my father. He died when I was 6 weeks old. I was born in Beirut. He was head of counterintelligence at the time of his death for the Central Intelligence Group. Can you hear me okay? Yeah?
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Yeah, for the Central Intelligence Group, which was the immediate precursor to the CIA. And anyway, it wasn't until I had become an adult that I began to wonder what happened to him, because he died, as I say, when I was 6 weeks old, after his top secret mission to Saudi Arabia. And the purpose of the mission was to figure out the safest route for the Trans-Arabian Pipeline, which was a very, very big deal at this time, because Saudi oil was so plentiful and so in demand. And in fact, Saudi oil would change the United States from being it would turn it into a major power in the Middle East and in the world. So there he was, looking at the route of the pipeline. And what I found interesting was whether it was going to terminate in Haifa, which was then Palestine, or whether it was going to terminate in Lebanon. So obviously, this got me really interested. If you look at a map and you look at the Eastern Mediterranean, in fact, it's on the cover of my book, you'll see 3 pipelines terminating in, or actually, yeah, in the Eastern Mediterranean. And one of them terminates in Haifa, the other one in southern Lebanon. That's the Trans-Arabian Pipeline. So anyway, that got me started. And I eventually sued the CIA to get more information. And I found out that my father had written what he called an analysis of work when he first went out there in 44, this time with the Office of Strategic Services, OSS. And he wrote what was expected of him. And it was very heavily redacted, lots of blacked out, but there was this one line that didn't get redacted. And it said the oil of, and I was sure it meant Saudi Arabia, was so important, we must control it at all costs. So then I started to think, I wonder if this became a meme for instance, all the post 9/11 wars that we've been going through in the 21st century, and maybe even many of the other wars. So that's what Follow the Pipelines is all about, because yes, indeed.
Hey, Charlotte.
Well, yeah.
Some are
Definitely.
saying some are saying your mic might work if you log out and log back in. So can we give that a try?
Yeah.
It is. Here's the thing: is we can't hear you, so it's not like they're not hearing, but it's just.
Oh, damn. Okay, I'll try.
Okay, thanks. All right, let's give that a try. She'll be back in a minute. Thank you guys for trying to real-time problem solve. Yeah, I don't. Weirdly, I've had a lot of guests on here. I've never quite had that issue. I've had other issues like just a slow internet, but this seems to be something else. All right.
Try.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, better. It's better.
Well, I wonder if I changed my background too. Would that have anything to do with it? Probably not.
Let's just stay where you are. I wouldn't lean forward because it seemed to be better when you're sitting back, and let's just keep going because it's sounding better now.
All right.
So I wanted to get to like present day, this insanity of us attacking Iran, and they've been angling for something like this for decades. I mean, as you've mentioned in your Substack and other places, General Wesley Clark said in 2001 that the Pentagon was planning to hit all these countries, and Iran was the crown jewel. So, in your opinion, what is going on right now?
Well, I find one thing that's very interesting is that none of the media commentators, no one's talking about getting Iran's oil. Trump said it. He said it a couple of days ago. They're all focused on going in there because, they want to stop its nuclear program. But the neocons that were supporting getting rid of 7 governments in 5 years, they did that way back in 2001. They had this whole plan. They're not talking about the oil, and it may be a reason because Iran's oil is a very sensitive issue for Iranians. The CIA overthrew their democratically elected prime minister, Mossadegh, in 1953 because he had nationalized the oil. They never forgot that. They remember that distinctly. And there are all sorts of machinations that were around the whole hostage taking, which I don't think I have time to explain, but I describe in my book. It was probably a setup because the Ayatollah started withdrawing the funds, all of Iran's funds from Chase Manhattan Bank that the Shah had put there. The Shah was very close to the Rockefellers, okay, and he put their money. Yeah.
Let me real quick show Donald Trump saying what you just mentioned, which is the media is not talking about stealing the oil, but Trump is.
Yeah, exactly.
Do take the oil because it's there for the taking. There's not a thing they can do about it. Unfortunately, the American people would like to see us come home. If it were up to me, I'd take the oil, I'd keep the oil, I would make plenty of money. And I'd also take care of the people of Iran much better than they've been taken care of.
Right. But yeah, he outwardly said, I want to take the oil. I would take the oil. He said, unfortunately, Americans are telling me just to come home, but I really would like to steal the oil. He said the same thing. I mean, that's the thing about Donald Trump is he's kind of refreshingly straightforward compared to some former presidents. With Syria, he said, we have the oil. We're going to protect the oil. With Iraq, he said, we should have taken the oil. Why didn't we take the oil? And this is the truth behind the scenes, no matter who was president. But here you have Trump admitting it.
Yeah, but it's a no-no. It's taboo. I mean, yeah, in many ways, Trump is rather refreshing. I mean, he went into Venezuela and he said, "I'm going to take the oil," and he got away with it in that case. But I'm sure there were many old line boys that cringed when he said that because, listen, they don't want people to see an oil connection to war. Because what mother would want to send her kids off to war if it was to, enhance the oil profits of oil executives, which, by the way, are making out really well right now with the Strait of Hormuz closed. They're doing just fine. But anyway, it's been a taboo subject for ever since, I don't know, 7 or 8 decades. You're not supposed to say we're going to war because of oil. So we are, and this is just the latest. And so,
and you've
yeah.
also talked about how important Israel has been since its origins strategically for the United States in the region. And Biden had said multiple times, not just once, but several times, he said, if there were no Israel, we'd have to invent it so that we could have our unsinkable battleship in the region. Can you talk about that?
That's exactly, that's what Israel became. I mean, that's why there's billions of dollars that's poured into Israel every year, and it is to protect the oil in the entire region. And the pipelines were closed. One of the pipelines was from Iraq. That was closed in 1948. It was built in the 30s, and it was conceived around the same time as the Balfour Declaration, 1917, after World War I, when the British said, we favor a Jewish homeland in Palestine. And really what they wanted is they needed a terminal point for Iraqi oil. And hence you got to re-examine the whole basis for the creation of the state of Israel, which was a settler colonial state set up there to advance at this time British interests who had no oil, and they needed oil, and they got the oil of Iraq, and that pipeline was built in the 30s. It served British interests, and then it closed in 1948 during Israel's War of Independence. Iraq was nationalistic at the time and didn't want to support this new state of Israel. And then the other pipeline, of course, was the Trans-Arabian Pipeline, which was built after my father died, although he was involved in its security considerations. He thought Lebanon would be much safer because there was too much violence in Palestine at the time. So it terminated in southern Lebanon, but that's very close to the Israeli border. And when I was looking at which troops were protecting which pipelines in which war, and I go into Afghanistan, I go into Yemen, I go into Syria, all of them, where troops are sent to protect pipeline routes. And I was looking at Israel, and I was thinking, like, where is the base that's protecting the Saudi Arabian pipeline, the Saudi pipeline? And then it hit me, it was Israel. The whole friggin' country was the protector of Saudi oil, going from the time it was built in the early 50s, after the CIA overthrew the president of Syria, Kuwatli. That was the first CIA coup. The second one was in Iran in 53. After they overthrew Kuwatli, then they built the pipeline. They put in a puppet who said, put it anywhere you want. So that stayed open until 1982, around 82. Mind you, this was in the middle of poor Lebanon having a 15-year civil war that went from 1975 to 1990. And it was finally closed. There are big, big schemes afoot to create an energy corridor along the Eastern Mediterranean right now. Netanyahu would love to reconnect that Iraq petroleum pipeline. He thought it would happen with the invasion of Iraq, but it couldn't. And so, anyway, now that's just thrown me off. Do you want to talk about it? Because anyway, I just want to say Netanyahu wanted to reopen that pipeline. Meanwhile, $500 billion worth of oil and natural gas has been discovered off the coast of Israel and Gaza and Lebanon, first in 2000 and even more in 2010. So the plan is to tap into that enormous wealth of oil and natural gas and running pipelines, energy core right up the coast to Turkey and then send it to Europe, which is to support Europeans because they lost cheap Russian energy due to the sabotage of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. It's all connected. All these wars are connected, and the thing that connects them is oil.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Nord Stream, because that is about the United States not liking or being furious that Europe was getting a lot of cheap oil from Russia and was becoming more economically connected to Russia than to the United States. And that's where things were headed, because it's very expensive to get oil from the U.S., get quote unquote energy from the U.S. shipped across the ocean to Europe. And so you had this, decades long plan for these Nord Stream pipelines that would just greatly increase the amount of Russian oil that would be presented to Europe. And so the U.S. had said for years prior to the proxy war actually kicking off that they would stop that Nord Stream pipeline. And there's the famous press conference where Biden's asked about it. He says, we'll stop it if we have to. And then the reporter says, stop it. How would you stop it? And he smirks and goes, we have ways. And then, of course, this mysterious bombing of the Nord Stream pipeline happens. And
yeah. I think I've been told it's been solved. But that's a whole nother issue. But yeah, can't go into it now. But you can imagine who might have been involved in that. So anyway, that's the scheme. There's also a scheme to run a pipeline. It's called a corridor, the India Middle East corridor. And that's going to run a pipeline across Saudi. It's going to connect India to Saudi Arabia, go under the sea, connect to Saudi Arabia, and terminate in Haifa. And that's also, it's going to be trains. It's going to be pipelines. And I noticed that it sort of followed the same route as the Trans-Arabian pipeline, which may be too much in disrepair, but they got big, big plans and they don't want to talk about it. I read one person who said, why is the West so silent about what's happening in Lebanon? It's because all the major powers would just as soon see this happen. And you cannot have a major infrastructure program and get financing from a bank if there is conflict. So the solution, I might even say the final solution, is wipe out Gaza, demilitarize it, get the people out of the way. That solves that problem, they think. Although a lot of people are not moving, they'd rather stay in tents than rather go through the Nakba of 1948 that had 750,000.
Well, it's not. Yeah, it's not just that they want to hold on to their homeland. It's also at the moment they have no ability to leave because even though there was a brief period where they claim the Rafah opening, the only opening that leads anywhere other than Israel, was open. In fact, it was barely open. It was open, but you had to go through an Israeli checkpoint where they very well could disappear you. You probably also had to pay some, extortion funds as well to get out, but they weren't letting very many people out at all. And so the surviving people in Gaza have no escape.
Yeah, I think there was a time when they thought they could push him off into Egypt, and then Egypt said no. Also, that was a consideration. But at any rate,
Egypt
so
has
now
kept them around.
the next thing is to hit Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. And so once again, you can't run this major energy corridor if you've got all these Shia and you've got Hezbollah there. And it's often not mentioned that the reason Hezbollah has stayed as long as it has is because it was the only group that fought back when Israel invaded in 1982. They were the ones who got the arms and fought it, and so they gained a lot of respect by the Shia. And then they turned to politics. They're members of the parliament, which is often not mentioned. Anyway, so Trump and Netanyahu seem to think that this latest bombing campaign is going to destroy Hezbollah, but I don't know. I have my doubts. I mean, these people, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, and it's yes, they're trying to destroy Hezbollah. They're trying to also create a civil war in Lebanon, another civil war, because that would be useful to them. Here is a clip. It's in Hebrew, but I'll read it's short and I'll read the subcaptions. But here's a clip of Israeli media and officials admitting that a civil war in Lebanon is the goal. The reporter says it seems like we're leading the state of Lebanon toward a civil war. Maybe it's not that bad for us. Let the Lebanese government fight Hezbollah. And then he says that's been the goal from the start.
Oh my God. Well, thank you for that. It's very sad to see. Well, the Lebanese civil war ultimately was about getting rid of the Palestinians, all the refugees that had poured into Lebanon since 1948, and then Jordan kicked out thousands more. That was called Black September. And they were getting, when I was there in 73 to 75, there were several Palestinian factions, and they were quite active. And so the powers that be decided that they wanted to get rid of the Palestinians, and it took them 15 years, but they finally got rid of them. Meanwhile, 150,000 Lebanese died. And so I really feel for the Lebanese. God help us, they're going to have another civil war. I mean, it's just tragedy upon tragedy, horror upon horror. And we sit here watching genocide on TV. I mean, what a world.
Yeah.
What a world we've come to.
Yeah. Huh. I agree. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to remind everybody the book is Follow the Pipelines. Can you let everyone know your Substack again?
It's called Who Benefits Cui Bono, and you can find it by just doing Charlotte Dennett Substack.com. You'll see all my essays.
Thank you so much for joining me again, Charlotte.
Thank you, Lee.
Keep fighting.
Same to you.
All right, that was quite informative. I'm sorry for the sound problems, but everyone could understand her, so they weren't that bad. And I really appreciate her coming on and joining us. Yeah, I also have a new Substack from just a couple of days ago about how what Israel is doing in Lebanon is defined as genocide. Even some of the most well-known genocide watch organizations in the world are alerting everyone to this being a genocide. The Limpkin Institute, another organization called Genocide Watch. And actually, I'm going to be doing a segment on that on this coming Unredacted Tonight. As I mentioned, in case some of you joined late, Unredacted Tonight has 2 episodes left, and then I am going to need to stop doing it, unfortunately. But these live streams will continue. My Substack columns will continue. I'll still be doing all of that. I also have live shows coming up in a few weeks in New York City, live comedy shows, New York City and Los Angeles. So if you're thinking about grabbing tickets, the details and everything are at leecamp.com/schedule. And if you feel like you've gotten a beer's worth of content out of this episode, I hope you will join up and keep my work going. It is It does suck to have to end Unredacted tonight, but with your help, I can keep all my other work going, including these live streams. And that's at reallycamp.substack.com, reallycamp.substack.com, as well as patreon.com/leecamp. That is another way to support me if you prefer Patreon. But, and almost all my stuff, all my Substack comments and everything, they're all free. They're all not paywalled. And it's really you guys that make that possible. So if you'd like to see that continue, please do consider the 1 beer a month option. All right, I'm going to be back Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific for another live stream. There's new Unredacted tonight on Thursday, and then another live stream Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. I will see you guys soon. Keep fighting.